views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting groups. If you'd like to produce a show, call us at 260-421-1250.
Jerry Street Magic here, and nothing in my hands. American flag. Okay. Put it back in my hands. Of course. Abracadabra. Gone. Okay. I have a very special guest here with us today, Tim Smith. And Tim is the candidate for our new mayor. And so I'm going to turn it over to Tim, and he has a special guest he's going to introduce with us. Take it away, Tim.
Well, thanks, Jerry. With me this morning is Cathie Hamarger. Cathie is a longtime personal friend and community activist and has been kind enough to participate. Cathie, thanks for helping out this morning.
You're so welcome, and a special thank you to Jerry for allowing us this time to talk on his program, even if I don't have a magic trick to share, Jerry. I hope that's okay. Tim, we've known each other more years than I would even want to remember. We go way back. But I'm certain there are several people watching this show who've never heard of Tim Smith. If you had the opportunity to have each one of them sit at the table with us, each resident of Fort Wayne, how would you introduce yourself?
Born in Fort Wayne, raised in New Haven, went to New Haven High School, graduated from there, and then Purdue, Fort Wayne, majored in political science. While at IPFW then, I had the privilege to do an internship in the Bush Quayle White House. Wow. And so during the days I was in the old executive office building, now the Eisenhower building, and at night actually with Senator Coates and at that time Director Mark Souter in Washington, D.C. as an intern. Only an intern, but nonetheless. Came back from that summer in D.C., worked on a congressional campaign for Rick Hawks. Following that, managed the re-election campaign for Paul Helmke, and then left that midway through in 1991, went to Indianapolis with my brand new bride at the time, and started law school in 1991. During our first year of law school, we had our first child. Second year, had our second child. Third year, a month before the bar exam, had our third child. Worked full-time in law school, went to law school at night full-time. Fortunately passed the bar, came home, started working for a company called MedPro Group up on the northeast side of town, where I've been ever since. So now I'm in my 25th year. By the way, had a fourth child a year later and a fifth child a year later. And of those 5 children, 4 married daughters with 4 grandchildren, and they all live in Fort Wayne. I consider myself the luckiest guy in the world in that regard. And my son is a junior at Purdue Fort Wayne. Well,
you have a little bit of catch up to do for me on the grandparenting front. I have 13
Oh,
grandchildren,
wow.
So you're enough younger than me, though, that I'm sure you'll catch me one of these days.
Maybe so, with 5 kids.
I have been able to interact with you over the years on several occasions about public policy and things political. So I've had the opportunity to watch as your career with MedPro has advanced, and I know you and Angie personally. And from where I sit, Tim, it looks like you've been very successful, which I think all of us would applaud. But now, why would you walk away from that to consider being mayor of Fort Wayne?
Well, that's a humbling question. Thank you. And you know, success, I suppose, differs in people's eyes. God has blessed the Smith family through my employer, through our church, 5 healthy children. We're blessed in many ways that have nothing to do with my activity or my wife's activity, mostly the support and love of a community of people. But during that summer in D.C., when I worked for Vice President Quayle and Senator Coates, I learned the value of small conservative government. And I learned that small government can really benefit people. And I was given a burning desire at that time to serve the public maybe through public office, but I didn't know when. My wife and I made a decision to raise our family and build a career. And as I mentioned, my 4 daughters are now married and gone. And so we're at a different phase in life. And so a few years ago, I was encouraged by many people over the years to run. It wasn't a good time. I was encouraged again. But it wasn't enough for me to be encouraged to run for mayor. I needed a vision for Fort Wayne, different and bigger than what we have. And I needed to convince myself that I was uniquely gifted and qualified to achieve that vision. Apart from those two things, it didn't matter how many people asked me to run for mayor. I wasn't going to do it.
Sure.
But I did land on those 2 items.
Great. Well, Tim, we haven't had the opportunity to talk much since you announced your candidacy, but I'm beginning to see these signs pop up at various places, and it says expect more.
Yeah.
Is that empty rhetoric? What do you mean by expect more?
Yeah. So as a professional, as an executive at one of Fort Wayne's most successful businesses, we do our best to improve processes every day to serve our customers better tomorrow than we did yesterday. We are constantly challenging ourselves to expect more. And I think the people of Fort Wayne, every taxpayer in Fort Wayne, should expect more out of all of their elected officials, municipal, township, county, state, federal. I believe that business principles applied to government will make government far more efficient and will provide better service to the taxpayers, who knows, maybe in the end even at lesser cost. So yes, one of the reasons I'm running is because I expect more each and every day from the people I work with, from myself, and I think we as taxpayers should expect more from our elected officials.
Well, thank you for explaining that to me. Now I'll know when I see these signs and it'll trigger our conversation. Well, everyone who runs for office, Tim, thinks they're the best qualified and the best suited for the position for which they're running. Why should we believe that you're the best candidate?
Well, I've been privileged at MedPro for the last nearly 24 and a half years, I guess I'm in my 25th year, to work with fantastic people and to learn from some of the best business owners in the world. When I started in 1994, our company was owned by 3 private families, and it was one of the largest companies of its kind in the nation. It's a healthcare liability insurance company. Some would call it a medical malpractice insurance company. Those 3 families sold it to General Electric in the late 90s, and General Electric sold it to Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's company, in 2005. I have been honored and privileged to get corporate training from the best corporations in the world, whether privately held and run like a small family Fort Wayne business. One of the largest companies in the world, General Electric, which is known to train their managers as well or better than any corporation, and now Berkshire. So why would a well-trained, seasoned business executive make a good mayor? For me, Cathie, it's simple. Business principles apply to government. You don't spend more than you bring in. You treat customers the way they want to be treated. Customers are taxpayers. And you are constantly seeking to optimize and make more efficient the government processes that serve the people. So business principles applied to government make me uniquely qualified because that's all I've done for the last 25 years.
Well, I've heard some political pundits say that elections are like a job interview and a job review for the one that is the incumbent. So as I think of the office of mayor, I think, okay, is the guy that's mayor now filling the potholes, cleaning the leaves, picking up the leaves and cleaning the snow off the streets? Is my life going on pretty much status quo without anything being missed by the mayor? So while those things may be getting done, do you see any other challenges that the mayor faces?
So, by the way, I have nothing but respect for Tom Henry. Anybody who served in public office, I think he was elected in 1983, almost, I guess his entire adult life, deserves our respect and certainly has my respect. The same is true about my primary component, by the way, Councilman Crawford. He's finishing up his 20th year in office. So those 2 gentlemen have served, and they merit our respect. They have mine. If I thought Fort Wayne was in the best possible place, I would not be running for mayor. So here's the vision. The vision is when Fort Wayne is the safest city in the Midwest, the smartest city in the Midwest, and the strongest city in the Midwest, then we will be the Midwest magnet for jobs, people, and nonprofits. So the vision is Fort Wayne can be, and I believe we have the bones for it, some would say. We have the infrastructure, we have the history, the foundation. We can be the safest, smartest, strongest city in the Midwest. Let me just unpack that a little bit.
Please.
So we've had over 100 murders in Fort Wayne in the last 3 years.
That's appalling.
It's appalling. Over 3/4 of which are unsolved. That is not a shot at the mayor. That is not a shot at the police department or the prosecutor. It's just a fact.
Right.
But it's a fact that has to change. I've recently spent a fair bit of time with a group of folks whose organization exists solely because they have one thing in common. They have lost loved ones to murder, and the murders have not been solved. Cathie, I hoped I would never meet that group. I wish that group didn't exist, but they do. We have a lot to do to become a safer city, no less the safest city in the Midwest. Let me give you just one or two suggestions of what could help. Back in the 90s, our police chief was big and talked a lot about community-oriented policing. We're trying to do it now a little bit, and we have an officer in charge of that. But we never should have stopped. For the last 10 years, we should have doubled down on community-oriented policing. When the police officers take their cars home, and whether they're at home or at work, especially when they're at work, they're meeting their neighbors and they're meeting the local businesses and they're building relationships with people, youth and middle-aged and older. And through those relationships, the people trust the police.
Indeed. I can tell you just from my personal experience in one small way, if I see a police officer's car parked at the curb in a neighborhood or in a driveway, I automatically slow down.
Yeah, I think we all do. Actually, that's a good segue into a second idea. But I have many ideas, but just two on safety so we can keep moving.
Sure.
I think we should pay police officers who are willing to relocate their families into higher crime precincts more money, and substantially more money, maybe 50% more money.
Wow.
I'll talk in a moment about the budget and where I think we could find those dollars and many more. But until we do something differently, we're going to get the same results.
Right.
We cannot have another 100 murders in 3 years, most of which are unsolved. So Fort Wayne has the potential to be the safest city in the Midwest. That's one of the reasons and the first reason I'm doing it. Secondly, it has the potential to be the smartest city in the Midwest. Now, there's an educational component. I'll come back to that. But smart is also about how we run the government. So recently, the city announced that they have rebid the health insurance, and they're going to go with Parkview instead of having an open network allowing city employees to choose either. Well, Cathie, most private employers 30 years ago made that decision.
That's been true for my husband. I know that for sure.
Indeed. And so most of us who have private insurance have been dealing with what's called closed networks for a long time. Well, in making this change, simply allowing the Parkview and Lutheran entities to negotiate, the city is saving $4.5 million a year. Now, they did not affect the copays nor the deductibles. Or if they did, it wasn't reported in the newspaper articles that I saw. My business has been negotiating health insurance every single year I've been there, 25th year.
Now, let me ask you, when was the last time the city of Fort Wayne did what you're saying?
Well, it's unclear, but it appeared from the media reports a couple weeks ago that this might have been the first time.
Ever?
It appears that way. I'm not positive, but it appears that way. What we know is they made a choice. They did not affect levers which actually have the most impact on cost. If you really want to affect health insurance costs, you pull the levers of co-insurance and deductibles. So we saved $4.5 million without doing that. Mayor Henry came into office 10 years ago. If we would have done it 10 years ago at $4.5 million, we'd have $45 million. Cathie, the story in Fort Wayne for the last 6 months has been Electric Works, and I'd love to talk about that. And we've been quibbling about where we're going to come up with $45 or $55 million. If we simply would have made this health insurance decision 10 years ago, we wouldn't even be having that conversation because the money would have been in the bank.
Without taxpayers paying one additional cent.
Precisely. So when I talk about Fort Wayne being the smartest city in the Midwest, that's what I'm talking about. One more small example. In business, there's something called process improvement. GE coined a phrase called Six Sigma. You literally look at every process, you gauge the health of the processes, and then you optimize the processes. Actually, a former Democratic mayor in Fort Wayne, Graham Richard, has written a book on this topic because Mayor Richard implemented Six Sigma in the city of Fort Wayne, and I think did it well. We don't do that anymore. Private business saves millions and millions every single year by overhauling processes. So you can fill potholes faster. You can plow streets more efficiently. Mayor Richard did something with light bulb inventory, of all things.
Wow.
The city is saving a lot of money today because we have less light bulb inventory because of a project that Graham Richard did. Things that are arcane that you ordinarily wouldn't think of, if you just take the time and the intentionality to focus on process, we can save a lot of money for the taxpayers of Fort Wayne. We can redeploy that into safety, smart, being the smartest city, etc. One other thing about SMART is this educational concept. So we have a number of trade association training programs. We have union training programs. We have non-union training programs. We have public school-based training, for example, Anthus Career Center. They're largely disconnected. Indianapolis is in the process right now of bringing together digitally the training programs for the trades. So here's an idea. We simply create a website, and on the homepage it says, be a plumber, make $65,000 a year. Be an electrician, make $80,000 a year. And we're not micromanaging those organizations that do it. You simply click on it and you're taken to the union training program or the non-union training program. I believe one of the main roles for mayor is to be the chief convener in Fort Wayne. The mayor has an opportunity to convene in a simple website all of the training organizations for purposes of feeding new employees to our employers. I've met with hundreds of business folks in the last few months, literally hundreds in the last 12 months. Almost everyone has said the same thing. Tim, we could grow our business a lot faster in this economy, but we can't find the workers.
Exactly. As I've heard Governor Holcomb speak from time to time, we can all recognize that Indiana is thriving in terms of business and expansion and all of those things. But what I have heard from the governor and some of the other people in the administration is that people to fill those jobs, just as you're saying, are not available.
Yes.
So I think a lot of the things you're talking about are going to mesh together. And for any of the listeners who's read the same book I have, Good to Great, your plan is to take Fort Wayne from good and make it great at the expense of using an overworked reference perhaps, but still.
Well, it's a great book by Jim Collins, which I've read as well, and it's a good analogy. Two last things on making Fort Wayne the smartest city in the Midwest. Zero-based budgeting and something I'm calling zero-based regulation. People talk about zero-based budgeting, but the city of Fort Wayne hasn't done it. If we did zero-based budgeting, even 1 year ago, no less 10 years ago, we would have uncovered the health insurance situation, and we would have fixed it. Zero-based budgeting simply says this. If last year's budget was $215 million, next year's budget is zero. You tell every department head the budget is zero, and they have to justify
it.
from the first dollar up every dollar that's spent. That's how private businesses keep their budgets lean and efficient each year. Now, I'm injecting something that I'm calling zero-based regulation into the discussion. I believe Fort Wayne, in fairly short order, can become the easiest city in the Midwest in which to do business, and here's how we're going to do it. In the first few months of the Tim Smith mayoral administration, each department head is going to appear before impacted businesses and residents, and they're going to be asked to justify every regulation that exists in their departments on the books. And to the extent that they cannot justify their regulations to the satisfaction of impacted businesses and residents, we're getting rid of them.
Well, that's a very ambitious plan, and it's been a delight, Tim, to watch as your campaign has unfolded. And that reminds me of some other campaigns I've been a part of. Back to the inauguration of then Governor Mike Pence, I remember standing outside the White House when he was given, or not the White House, excuse me, the State House. Well, as it turned out, perhaps,
that's
but
right.
in any event, and I heard his inaugural address. And one of the things that he said and then immediately did was to say, this is what I'm going to do on my first day. And then he did it. What would you do as mayor on your first day?
Well, that's one thing we're going to do. I mean, fine-tooth comb through every single line item. That's going to take longer than a day, but the focus is going to start that day. Ditto the regulations. So zero-based budgeting, zero-based regulation. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be spending more than half of my time attracting jobs. So some might say our unemployment rate is better than it's been in a decade. True. Our wages, however, have fallen in relation to other cities in the Midwest. If you think about the large employers in Fort Wayne that we've attracted since GM in the early 80s, you won't think of one. Now, Vera Bradley, Sweetwater, homegrown companies,
Sure.
fantastic anchors in our community. Just this past week, Sweetwater announces a huge addition and 1,000 jobs. Chuck is doing a fantastic job there. Ditto Vera Bradley. And then we've got companies like Brotherhood Mutual and even my company, MedPro, that are growing, and many others. But in terms of attracting large employers to Fort Wayne, for 30 years, Cathie, it hasn't happened. That has to change. And I think we have an excellent product to sell. Now, job attraction and raising our average wages is not, however, just about big employers. It's actually more so about small employers. So you ask me what I'm going to do in the first day. The budget review, the regulation review, and an intensified push for more new business on the large side and the small side. Fort Wayne will be the Midwest's leading incubator for entrepreneurs and for small business startups if I'm mayor. Let me give you one example. We have a lot of insurance companies in Northeast Indiana, Allen County, even just right here in Fort Wayne. Insurance companies and financial institutions need the same three things. They need data, IT, and analytics. If they're going to succeed for the next 20 or 30 years, insurance companies and banks need data, IT, and analytics. If you add up all of the revenue from Fort Wayne and Allen County's insurance companies and the number of employees, we have billions and billions, more than 4 or 5 in revenue, and thousands, more than 6, less than 10. So here's what the mayor does, Cathie. This is what a business-oriented mayor does. He flies across the country and he talks to the companies in the spaces of data, IT, and analytics. And by the way, this is only an example in one business sector. There are examples for orthopedics, for automotive supply chain, for the restaurant industry. Every one of our core sectors could tell a similar story. I only tell this one because I live in this space every day. So the mayor flies around and he talks to small to startup, mid-sized companies in the data, IT, and analytics space, and you ask them one question. In Fort Wayne, we have billions of dollars in annual revenue and thousands of talented employees. Would you like to move your business here and participate and benefit from some of that? And Cathie, I think they'll come. Businesses will move to Fort Wayne when two things are true. First, they think their money will multiply faster in Fort Wayne. And secondly, they conclude their employees will be happier.
Right.
I give a lot of credit to our current elected officials, to our current civic leaders, our current charitable leaders. As a community, we've done a fantastic job in the last 10 years improving what some call quality of place here in Fort Wayne. That gets to the second point. Will these employers believe their employees will be happier? I believe that's more true today than it has been in the past because of this good work. But they also have to believe their money will multiply faster. And in this one small example, and I'll let you ask another question, in this one small example, if small to mid-sized startups in the data, IT, and analytics space are presented with a simple value proposition, we have billions in revenue and thousands of employees. All you have to do is come here.
Wow.
I think they're going to come, Cathie. And when they come, average wages in those three sectors, data, IT, and analytics, are 50 to 80% higher than the average wages in Allen County. One last stat. Many say, well, our cost of living, yes, our wages are low in relation to other Midwestern cities, but our cost of living is so good. True. But if you look at Cincinnati, for example, Cincinnati, Ohio's cost of living is roughly the same as Fort Wayne's. And yet their average wage is approximately $10,000 higher per job than Fort Wayne.
Wow.
We can have it both. We can have a low cost of living and a much higher average wage. The way to do it is you attract new jobs, whether small, medium, or big, who pay the higher wages. And once we bring in the higher wage jobs, and by the way, every minimum wage job is good. Every $30,000 job is good. But the more higher dollar wages jobs we have, the more dollars are flowing through our economy, the more gallons of milk are sold, the more tennis shoes are purchased, right?
The more plumbers
The
are
more
needed,
plumbers,
the more electricians, and
homes.
it just becomes a ripple effect.
Yes.
That is very exciting. So what I'm hearing you say is that we don't have, you didn't say this, but what I'm thinking is we don't have mountains, we don't have an ocean, we don't have a good climate, some might claim. So you're going to entice those businesses to come to Fort Wayne for reasons that are going to counter that.
Yep. Well, I haven't said it like that, but that's pretty good. I might start saying it like that. Businesses will come here when two things are true. I'll say it a second time. They believe their money will multiply faster and their employees will be happier. Look, I've lived here since I was 4 in Fort Wayne or New Haven. I love Fort Wayne. Mm-hmm. I went to college here. I've worked here for 25 years. I know the people of Fort Wayne. We are good-hearted people. So no, we don't have mountains. No, we don't have rivers. But what we have is we have a pretty good moral fabric in our town. We have a pretty darn good work ethic in our town. We have hardworking people who go to work every day, put in the 9 to 5, making somebody else's life better, and they come home, they take care of their family, they help their kids study, they pay their taxes, they try to relax on a weekend and go to a ball game. This is the Midwest. We are the salt of the earth people. So employers want that. Right. You know, what I want as an employer is I want people of high integrity who are smart, creative, work hard, and look out for others before themselves. That's what we look for in employees. Fort Wayne is full of those folks. I simply think we need a messenger who is on a plane telling our story more often. Cathie, I believe these jobs are going to come to Fort Wayne because all those things are true.
Well, let's turn a bit of a corner, Tim. Not everybody swims in the same political pond that you and I swim in. And many people look at primaries and they think, oh, if they're running on the Republican ticket, they're just about the same, or if they're running on the Democrat ticket or whatever, that the candidates are just about the same. How do you distinguish yourself from your primary opponent?
Yeah, again, I have a lot of respect for Councilman Crawford and Mayor Henry, but Councilman Crawford are very different on the issues. For example, there have been 3 tax increases in Fort Wayne since 2013. There was the original county option income tax. There was the wheel tax, which imposed, and by the way, the original county option income tax was about $50 to $70 per family that made $40,000 or $50,000 a year. There was the wheel tax, and I think it was 2016, that if you had a car, paid an extra $25 on your plate. If you had a truck, it might have been $60. And then last year, in 2017, the council passed again an increase to the local income tax. The sum of those, plus the sewer rate increases and or the water rate increases and or general property tax increases, which we read about in the paper a couple years ago because the school system needs a little bit more. You know, the sum of all these taxes, Cathie, they add up. They add up.
And do I remember, Tim, some years ago when the situation was that there was a tax that was imposed. I can't remember exactly what kind of tax it was, but it was to be in effect until the Coliseum was renovated. Yeah. That didn't go away, did it?
That's called the restaurant tax. It's 1%. We all pay it, and that funds something called the Capital Improvements Board. Let me come back to that when we talk about electric works. You asked me the difference between me and Councilman Crawford. The first difference is John voted for all 3 of those taxes. I would have voted no on all 3 of those taxes. Now, the reason I would have voted no is because, as the health insurance example has just demonstrated, there is plenty of opportunity for savings and optimization in the current budget. We don't need to raise taxes until the current budget is optimized.
Right.
The mayor just found $4.5 million, and it wasn't hard. The $4.5 million.
And it didn't impact the employees.
Well, their health insurance has changed. They now have one system instead.
Right, but it didn't negatively impact the coverage.
Correct. And by the way, both of our 2 systems, Lutheran and Parkview, are 2 of the best systems in the Midwest. So to only be confined to one is no burden. These are both 2 excellent systems. So the first thing that distinguishes me from Councilman Crawford is it was a yes, yes, yes on all 3 tax increases. He was a yes on the acquisition of the North River property. You might recall OmniSource or the Rifkin family owned that. Well, the city purchased the North River property for about $1 million more than appraisal and without a full environmental study. Now, that property sat dormant for decades because no private buyer would buy it. And there's one reason the private buyers wouldn't buy it. They strongly suspect it's polluted. I don't know if it is or not. I know the types of businesses that have sat there for decades, but no private actor would ever buy a large parcel of property, 20 plus acres, without knowing exactly the pollution status of that property. John was the 5th and deciding vote. on that. I would have voted no until the full environmental study came down. I also would not have supported paying $1 million more than appraisal. That's the second thing that makes us different. When it comes to crime fighting, assisting with our drug challenges, I do not favor free needle exchanges, for example. And Councilman Crawford is on record saying that he does. So those are three examples. There are social examples. Cathie, I'm proudly pro-life. And I've yet to hear Councilman Crawford say the same thing.
That's true.
So whether social or fiscal or tax, there are many differences between Councilman Crawford and me. And I'm actually looking forward to this campaign in the next 6 or 8 months to talk more about those.
So assume you prevail in the primary. How will you differentiate yourself from Mayor Henry? Why should the voters vote to put him out of a job?
Yeah. Well, in terms of the tax increases that I just mentioned, Mayor Henry supported the same. In terms of the North River property, Mayor Henry supported the same. Now, interestingly, on something such as the pay-to-play ordinance in Fort Wayne, Councilman Crawford and Mayor Henry saw it differently. So in December of 2017, Councilman Crawford and the City Council passed an ordinance that said anybody who gives $2,000 or more to a municipal candidate would be precluded from taking a fee-for-services vendor. It was a little more complicated than that, but that was the essence. Mayor Henry vetoed that. Council overrode the veto, and that's an ordinance today in Fort Wayne and governing our elections. At the time, another city councilman wrote a letter to the editor, it might have been a full op-ed, which reflected some research that he had done. And that research said that in the 4 years prior to Mayor Henry's 2015 reelection, he had collected about $1 million in campaign donations from about 50 vendors. Those same 50 vendors, according to this city councilman's letter to the editor, yielded $125 million of city contracts.
Wow.
This is the reason City Council passed what's called the pay-to-play ordinance. And in terms of getting financial influence out to protect the taxpayers, that's a darn good thing. And I think most of us on the outside looking in probably feel the same way. Now, strangely, Councilman Crawford and others in June of this year watered down that ordinance a little bit. Now the mayor vetoed it a second time. So you ask me how I'll distinguish myself from Councilman Crawford or the mayor. The mayor supported the tax increases, I would not. The mayor supported North River, I would not. The mayor vetoed the pay-to-play ordinance, I would not have. But those things are negative. Let me talk about the positive. My vision is that Fort Wayne can be the safest, smartest, strongest city in the Midwest. My vision is that our wages cannot grow to match Cincinnati, Ohio, but we can exceed Cincinnati, Ohio. That we'll have the best cost of living and the highest average wages in the Midwest. I believe applying business principles to government will get us there. I am not critical of Mayor Henry. I am not critical of Councilman Crawford as individuals, as persons. In fact, as I said earlier, I have a lot of respect for them for being in service as long as they have. But I am going to draw a contrast between what they've done, which evidences what they believe, and how I would have done it differently and how I will do it differently.
Hence, expect more.
We have to expect more.
Indeed. Just want to return to one thing that you touched on briefly a couple of times in our conversation, and that's Electric Works, that whole project.
Yeah.
As I recall, everybody loves the tin caps. Not everybody loved the tin caps in the stadium idea before it was built.
Yeah.
But I understand that there was some purchases that were made of residential properties and that kind of thing that follow what you explained about the North River project. That there may have been some prices paid that could have been cheaper for the city to purchase. So how can we make certain that the Electric Works project does not happen the same way?
Yeah, well, I don't know the particulars to which you refer, but here's my view on Electric Works. I support Electric Works. I support it for the same reason I think most people do, and that is we have had a blight on that property for decades. It's enormous, 1.2 million square feet. And if we can inject hundreds of millions of dollars of local contractor wages And if we can fill it, it's going to be a great thing. Excuse me. However, and so I support Electric Works for those things. However, I'm actually really delighted we're having an Electric Works conversation for two related but distinct reasons. The first is, it's forcing us to contemplate the ratio of public to private financing in projects like this. You mentioned Parkview Field. It's fantastic. Our community loves it. I love it. I'm there multiple times every summer with my family, with our business. It's a great place to take clients. Love it. Glad we did it. And I think Electric Works can be the same. But we have to have a robust discussion in this community about the right ratio between public and private funding on projects like this. I support those that are not just majoritively, but largely so privately funded and much less on the public side. I thank and commend my many friends who've been helping structure these kinds of deals. What I want to do as mayor, though, is I want to have a community that's drawing businesses to Fort Wayne who are voluntarily injecting corporate dollars into our city so we can build these things with private dollars. My daughter and son-in-law lived in Greenville, South Carolina. I'll come back to the second point in a moment. For the last few years. Greenville, South Carolina is a beautiful city. They are the national headquarters for Michelin and BMW and TD Ameritrade and GE Power and Water. There's
Somewhat similar in size to Fort Wayne.
Indeed, a little smaller, in fact. But more engineers per capita, in fact, than any city in America. As a result, their wages are high, and those four huge corporations are pumping a ton of money into downtown Greenville. Now, coincidentally, there's a river that runs through downtown Greenville. Nod of the hat to Robert Redford, I guess, for a river running through.
River runs through.
Yes, indeed. Fort Wayne can be that, Cathie. And once we have those large new private employers, once we are this incubator for entrepreneurs and we're bringing money from the bottom and bringing money from the top, we're going to be able to build these things with more private dollars. So that's the first reason I'm excited about it.
It's not either or, it's both and.
It's both and. The second reason I'm excited about the Electric Works discussion and the prospect of the project, and I hope it goes through, is because it's forcing us to ask the hard question, how will we fill 1.2 million square feet? That's what it is. It's 1.2 million square feet. We're increasing the amount of square footage in downtown Fort Wayne by a large margin.
Indeed.
The largest project we've had in years. So we must ask, how will we fill it? And displacement is not the answer. Moving a business from another side of town to downtown, creating a vacant building is not the answer.
It just shifts the problem somewhere else.
Absolutely shifts the problem. So we're back to jobs and job attraction, talking about attracting those specialty insurance companies that specialize in data, IT, and analytics. The focus of our mayor needs to be attracting jobs, the small entrepreneurs, the large employers. And once we do, we will fill the space and we will flip the ratio of our economic development projects from too heavily public to predominantly private. That's the role of the mayor in this one respect, Cathie, and that's what I'm excited about doing.
Well, it's been a delight to have this conversation with you, Tim. I know I've learned a lot, and I hope the viewers have too. Maybe we can sit down again as this continues to unfold and take this conversation to the next level. But I just want to remind everyone that what Tim's been sharing is basically to expect more. And now we know what that means. Thank you so much, Tim.
Cathie, thanks for coming with me today. I appreciate your friendship.
How long?